Mill Village. Yes, sir.
Okay, now.
And this picture was made around September of 1934 when the strike was on at the U.S. Rubber Company. And I think it was a rubber company. And these are some of the men that they put in jail for that was on there. Okay, this one here is Tut Spencer. This one here is James Medley. I really don't know. This is Frank Todd here, and Truett Sims here, and a Dunn Bowie, and a Hanson Bowie. As far as the rest of them, I really don't know.
Now, why did you keep that picture?
Well, I really don't know. It came out in the paper, and I just cut it out. And in fact, we kept pictures back then more so than they do now. And
could you tell me about that event? What do you know about that event?
the only thing I know about that, I was not working. I was pregnant at the time, and I was not in this, so I can't tell you anything about that because I just don't know enough about it to say something about it. Only thing was that my husband, he went down to the mill, but he did not go with them because he came back home because I was pregnant, and he didn't want to get locked up, I reckon.
And I believe his brother was in that.
Yes, James Medley, who has passed away.
Did you ever talk to James Medley about the strike?
No, because he was young and left Hogansville at that time, so never did talk to him about it.
Talk to me about why he left.
Why James left? Well, I really don't know. It could have been a personal matter. I just don't know.
Do you think he was made to leave?
No, I don't think so because he married here and then went out to Oregon. He was living in Oregon when he passed away.
So he didn't leave right after the strike?
No, because he was just a young boy.
You were living in the village at the time?
I was living on Granite Street, number 5 Granite Street, in the house with my mother and sister.
Well, there must have been some talk around the town about what was happening.
Yes, it probably was, but it's been so long till I can't think of anything. Because that was, how many years ago? 35, and this is 91, so it's been a good long while.
Tell us about working in the mill.
Well, I went to work at East Newnan, and then in 1932, when everything hit the bottom, they began to lay off people, and we moved in the house with my brother that lived on Lincoln Street. And we were in the house with him from October of 1932 until about March of 1933. And we finally got a job in the mill. And I went to work as a spooler tender. And my sister went to work as a spinner. And I worked there for, well, up until I married in 1934. And then I worked off and on after then till my children entered school. And I went back to work and worked on the 3rd shift doing the same thing. I was a spooler tender, what they called then automatic spooler. And I was on the 3rd shift and my husband was on the 1st shift. And then after that, I went to work at the drugstore here, managed a furniture store. Then I went to school down in LaGrange. Then I went to work as a bookkeeper down in LaGrange for J.G. Davidson Jr. And then after that, I started to work with the elderly here in Hogansville, and I've been with them ever since.
Now, back to when you first started working, tell us how you got your job and what you got paid.
The first job I had, I went to work I started as carrying the dinner to the mill for my two sisters. And I learned, while they were eating lunch, I tried to learn how to spin. And I went to work spinning and worked from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, with 30 minutes for dinner, and from 6 to 11 o'clock on Saturday, and made $6.96 a week. Then when we moved to Hogansville, we made anywhere from $10 to $11 a week. And I'm making more of that now than I've ever made in my life, an hour.
Now, why was that your wages raised?
Well, Roosevelt come to be president, and we went on 8 hours, and they made a minimum wage at that time about $1.18, I believe, an hour. And from that, it just began to inch up just a little bit.
Now, when Roosevelt came in, the hours were cut and the wages went up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Just describe the difference.
Well, we thought we were rich when we got a paycheck for $10. And we raised our children on $14 a week. And that's about all I know.
Now, what did you know about the union here?
Well, I know that it never went in. They tried to get it to go, but some were for it and some against it, and then you had to work back then, and if they found out you was joining the union, you'd lose your job. And so they tried several times. They came back into Hogansville several times to get it started, but they never did get it started.
Did you know any of the leaders?
No. I went to one meeting that they had out on the South Highway up here, and he was trying to get somebody to talk, and I'm always one to put my mouth in, so I said something to him. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, he wanted me to join them and take a job with them, but my husband said no. So that's just about all I know about it.
Why do you think your husband said no?
Well, because he wanted me at home with him for one thing. And then I was pregnant too.
Do you regret?
Not going? No, because I've had a good life. And I enjoy being as old as I am too. I don't want to live my life over.
Do you think that it would have made any difference if they brought a union in here?
Well, I really don't know, because then they began to speed up the work after everything, and they had the BDO men that would come in and check you, and you had to do so much in a day, and if you didn't for so long, they would finally tell you they didn't need you anymore.
Did you ever get time by the BDO men?
Not really, because I was too slow. They did not want me to time me, because I was not as fast as some of the rest of them. but I did see them with the others when they would come to time them.
Tell us, what were the people's attitude toward the Beto man?
Well, they didn't care too much about him, but they were afraid to say anything.
To start off, just they didn't care too much about the Beto man.
They did not care too much about the Beto man, and they wouldn't treat him real good.
Yeah, let's start again. I want you to say, repeat. They didn't like the Beto man, or they didn't think too much about the Beto man, but they were afraid to say so. And
yeah,
explain about that. So
they were afraid if they.
Just start off. I need to have you say the Beto man. Okay.
They just did not like the Beto man because they would put the work up so high till they could not reach it. Now, my husband Mike could tell you more about the Beto man than I could because he worked in the card room, and I worked in the spool room. That was where we would take the material that came from the spinning room and put it on the spoolers so that they could put it on the winders, then get it ready for the weave shop.
Well, we're going to talk to your husband in a few minutes about this, but again, could you go back and tell us that they didn't like the Beto man and what they were afraid to?
They were afraid if they said anything to them that they would lose their job. And we had to have work to live. It was not like it is now that where you could, if they laid you off, you could get some money from the government. They just did not have that back then. You had to make do with what you had. And if you didn't have anything, you just went without.
Well, who were these men?
You mean the Beto men? I really don't know any of them's names. Sure don't, because they would not have them that live here in the village. They would bring them in from somewhere else. So I guess you couldn't say anything to them. And just don't know too much about it.
That's very helpful to us because we've heard people talk about the Beto men.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to one over in LaGrange.
Well, there is one here that did some Beto work, but he's a Mason. I mean, his last name's Mason. So,
is he still living?
yes,
You might get his name.
Hansel Mason is his name.
What did people think about him?
Well, he was a pretty nice man, and they knew they had to work, so they didn't say anything to him.
Now, you got an education late.
Yes.
Could you go back and tell about what you...
I'm sorry.
Could you go back and tell us first how much education you had as a child, and then how old you were when you finally went back to school?
Well, I finished the 7th grade there in East Newnan. And back then, you knew as much as more than you do when you get out of high school now. Because, and then we moved down here, and then after the children left home, I went back to school in LaGrange to a bookkeeping. I learned bookkeeping. And I knew more than two of the girls that was in college about math, and spelling. They couldn't spell nor do math. And then I went to work for Guy Davidson and worked 9-10 years for him.
Did you ever think about going into mill management?
No, I did manage a furniture store, but and then I run a cafe for a while, and all the taxes and everything, I'd rather work for the other man than have to fool with them.
could you tell us what it was like working in a mill as a young person?
Well, I was on the third shift, and my mother said that I was scared something would happen while I was asleep, and I wouldn't know what it was. The reason I didn't sleep anymore in the daytime, and I would go to work at 12, work till 8 after we went on 8 hours, and you knew everybody around and most everybody in the village, but nowadays you don't. And I still didn't get to keep much of my money up until I married. I didn't know how to manage money, period. My husband, then you bought groceries on a credit, and we lived right next to the drugstore there, and they had a grocery store. And I was 18 years old and would go in and put things on the bill, and he went to pay one day, and it was more than he had drawn that week. So he come home and said, "Snookum, I hate to treat you like a child, but you have the mind of a child now, and I'm going to tell Mr. Shackford not to let you have any more groceries unless you get a note from me." Well, I thought I was grown, so I didn't go up there for quite a while. And when I did go, Mr. Shackford said, "Well, I wondered where you was at." Said, "I haven't seen you in a long time." I said, "Well, I know my husband told you not to let me have nothing else on the credit." He said, "Oh, he didn't do it." Said, "He just told you that." So I was real young when we married. He just about raised me. And we worked together real well in the mill. He was on first shift and I was on the second. We kept our children busy by digging a cellar under the house that has never been finished. But one would dig and the other would throw the dirt out the back. We always knew where our children were, and if they weren't, we found them. And I tell you now that the mills have really gone down. Both of them have been, well, they have torn one of the mills down, and it was owned by Callaway at one time. Well, in fact, I think the rubber company was owned by Callaway.
Now, you never got into the asbestos?
No, I always worked out in the cotton part. No, I never worked in the asbestos.
You're lucky.
Mm-hmm. I do know that they had a doctor from Union that told them there was nothing the matter with them for a good long while, and they found out then that it would cause cancer.
Okay. There are other things that you'd like to ask? Just let us know when you recognize it.
Okay. If I don't see the face, I know I won't recognize them.
Could you talk about what you remember happening at this time?
LT, you was there. I don't know anything.
I wasn't there.
And this, I don't know who that is. They got him with a pocket of who he is.
LT, why weren't you there?
I had just went somewhere. We was in the cars riding around at that time. I just hadn't got back.
What persuade you to go out with them?
Curiosity.
Everybody, the work down there was going.
Why were they going?
They was on strike. So I don't know what the strike was about now.
How old were you at that time?
There's no way to tell.
22.
Somewhere along there.
I was 18 and he was 22 because we married in March, and that was in September of 1934.
See, I don't even remember that.